Hey everybody, it's John here. I want to talk about the Battle of Midway, which is a scenario that's up and coming. This was McMonkey, Grishnach, and my attempt to create a scenario, um, as a team and churn it out within 3 weeks. Here we are, almost 2 years later. Anyways, it's gonna come out pretty soon, I'd say. Really only have 2 different events that I'm still trying to get to work, and once I have those, should be able to play test and release it. I need to tweak a couple things, but nothing insurmountable. For the most part, the work on this is done. So, anyways, this is another multiplayer only scenario. Depicts the Battle of Midway. And there are only 2 playable nations, the Japanese and the United States. And, the big gimmick here is that I've got a very limited scenario where both sides know exactly what happened in history. I mean, it's a world famous battle. If you're playing a game that is a history game, you've heard of Midway before. You just couldn't avoid it, especially with the big blockbuster film that just came out a few months ago. So, anyways, both sides know that there's going to be a major carrier battle here. So if I just had, the units deployed, um, at the very beginning of the game, there'd be no fog of war. Everybody would make a straight beeline to the other carrier fleet. And if you read about the battle here, the really interesting thing is how much of it came down to just chance of the scout plane for the Japanese, that one particular plane that just was delayed a little bit and allowed our carriers to just get into a little bit of a gap there. Excuse me. And little things like that. Just the fact that the United States were able to find their carriers before the United States carriers were found, and so on and so forth. A lot of that chance, a lot of that fog of war and randomness would be missing without the help of Lua. So what we have here is an interesting little thing that you can't do that easily, anyways. And I don't think you could do it at all for a multiplayer game with the macro text. And what I have is at the beginning of the scenario, each player is going to be presented with an option about where they want their fleet to deploy. Each side gets 2 fleets. The Japanese carrier striking force is guaranteed to pop up on turn 1. Their second fleet may never arrive. It could arrive on turn 2, but it could also be delayed indefinitely. It's just it's going to be a random draw every single turn, so you're going to get a bit of uncertainty there, and you might have a more difficult time or less difficult time. But I think you need to have that uncertainty with the Japanese just because they're so much more powerful if you don't. And there's really no reason not to just throw all your capital ships right at Midway to try to win. So it's important there's a delay. But anyways, so you have to choose. Are you going to have your fleet deploy in the north, basically the center of the map, or the south of the map? And I'll just show you. If you click approach from the north, there they are. If you clicked approach from the west down below, they would have showed up there. This is the second fleet, the one that may or may not arrive at any given moment. We'll choose the west. We'll see what happens. Not going to play the whole thing for you. Although, I really could, because you've only got 75 units. It's the neat little thing about it, right? So these are just some submarines, just doing some scouting. Now, we do have several of the different quality of life mechanisms that Professor Garfield put into Over the Reich, one of which is pretty exciting. It's the formation flying. You might notice all these grid lines. They're just 5 spaces apart, and all of the aircraft fly in multiples of 5 spaces. The idea being, basically just help people figure out how they're doing for range. Another thing that I have going for range, I'll show you right here. So if you press tab, this will actually show you where your nearest aircraft carrier is. That is also a feature from Over the Reich, although in Over the Reich we looked for the nearest airfield, and here we're doing carriers just because that's what the nearest airfields are going to be. These cities over on the left, if I was doing this all over again, they wouldn't be here. They'd be hidden under a different map. but I decided that I needed them for the payload mechanism after McMonkey did all of these grid lines, and so I am not going to redo all of them just to get a second map. And so this is we're going to play it like it's 1999, and this is the way uh, these kind of cities function now. The whole purpose of them is so that units that require a payload, meaning they can only attack once per sortie, and since I'm just playing here, I'll just show you. So here it just attacked, right? Now it's expended its payload, so it needs to actually land before it can rearm. So we'll have to take that back to do so. Anyways, to have the payload mechanism work, you need to have home cities for the different units, and so that is why I have 4 home cities on the map for the Japanese, each one corresponding to a different carrier, and each one allowing a certain number of units to be supported at any given time. And they're pretty much maxed out. So if you lose a carrier, you can land your other units, like Kaga's Air Force could land on Akagi, but if Akagi's fully supporting their own force, Kaga's force is not going to be able to rearm on Akagi. So anyways, I'll just kind of pretty much just end the turn in a second. Just trying to keep this short, but just want to show you a little bit about it. This is a big time saver right here, as you can see. So anyways, you can see what the map looks like. So the Japanese forces, they're probably, I don't know, a few turns away anyways from hitting Midway. To win, it's the first team to 200 points is going to win this scenario. There are a few targets over here that I'll show you on the next turn that are each worth 10 points, and every carrier is worth 50. So for the Japanese to win, they want to sink all the American carriers, and they want to destroy Midway. Now, the neat thing about this is you're going to see there's another text box here, and it's player 2. That normally doesn't happen with macro. However, with Lua, there's an event that's you can call your functions after production, which basically, I don't know the technical term for it, but as long as you have a unit that can activate, this thing will show up. So you can have text boxes that only show up for player 2 or 3 or 4, whatever you want. And in that case, this dedication, of course, to my wife, I want everybody to see because she's wonderful. And then you see they actually get a little bit different message, right? So the Japanese got a message about how they're going to attack Midway, and here the United States kind of gets an idea about their scope of the scenario. Basically, the cryptographers have determined that Japanese are trying to attack Midway Island, and you have Task Force 16 steaming towards the island with carriers USS Enterprise and USS Hornet. And also Task Force 17 with the damaged USS Yorktown is on its way as well. I wanted to give, it's the same deal, okay? You have your 2 fleets, you got to figure out where they're going to be. We need to sink all 4 of their carriers if we're going to. So I'm going to say Yorktown's coming from the south, Enterprise and Hornet are coming from the north, and unfortunately I did not get them this turn. So the United States carriers don't arrive on turn 1 because of the way that the map is situated. Midway, I probably should have put it in the middle, but I didn't. Anyways, it's over here, so the Japanese, and the reason for that is so the Japanese have to commit. If they're going to hit it on their very first launch, they kind of have to commit to it. They couldn't go all the way down here and then very easily go all the way up here too. But as you can see, the U.S. fleet is going to be significantly closer when it deploys. So I have a little bit of a delay. It's fog of war. The Japanese could send their scout plane over here and find nothing and turn around, and the very next turn, there it is. It's just how it is. But the chances of these 2 fleets deploying are significantly better than the Japanese second fleet anyways. So as I mentioned, there's a couple units that need to be destroyed. You need to destroy basically these 4 units and then these fuel tanks. and that they all add up to 50 points. And then you also have to sink the 3 carriers as the Japanese. One of the nifty little things about the Test of Time patch project is that this is just a special resource, shallow water. It doesn't do anything in this scenario. I mean, I'm sure with Lua you could probably figure out a way to keep ships away for it or cause bad things to happen to them, at least if they started their turn on it. And if they were AI, ever, because the AI on activation function apparently per Garfield works every single time the AI moves, as opposed to for the human player where it only works when the unit's actually activated. The US has a little bit of an advantage because they're, although they can't use all their aircraft here, their spy plane, the Catalina, moves a lot faster than the Japanese one. That's just another thing to try to throw some historical accuracy almost into it. I'm just going to control N and go through a couple of these because the video is getting long and I just want to see if we ever trigger the US fleet. And there we go. Task Force 17 happened to show up on turn 2 here, and 16. So this was a good draw. That's not always going to happen. But now you see the US Navy has arrived. And where did I put everybody? Yeah, so here's one down here and one over here. So if the Japanese, if they had their spy plane and it was going here, well, they guessed wrong. They don't find it. If I had both of my fleets down here and they sent their spy plane up here, they guessed wrong. They don't find it. So, the US, I think, has a little bit of an advantage that way, and I think they should. But anyways, that's going to be it for this scenario. Again, I'm hopeful to have this out soon. I really only need 2 events to get it going, and one of them I think I could probably write since Garfield gave me a lot of help on it. The other one is a reaction thing, and if you've ever read Over the Reich's events files, well, that's just a beautiful disaster. I mean, he's Professor Garfield for a reason because that gentleman crams so much stuff into that. It's amazing and it's inspiring, and I'm not talking poorly about it at all. In fact, I'm very grateful that he did all that. But I can't make heads or tails out of it because I am a mere mortal, and Lua coding, I can do very little stuff and just know enough to be dangerous. But anyways, he's going to be building a module soon, and once that's done and I figure out how to read it, should be moving this scenario out, and I hope somebody will play it. So with that, I'll let you go.